VP. He was a VP of product at Netflix starting 2005, and in 2010, he joined his next startup, Chegg, a textbook rental and homework help company that went public in 2014. Today, he's an advisor, writer, workshop host, and guest lecturer at both Stanford and INSEAD MBA school in France and Singapore. Today, he's going to talk about how Netflix built a world-class culture. And with no further ado, I'll ask Gibson to take charge of sharing the screen and sharing his own presentation. So thank you, Gibson, for being with us.
Hi, Andre. It's great to be here. I think you need to stop sharing so I can begin to share. There we go. It is about 10 minutes before 5 in the morning, 14 minutes before 5. I am in California right now, just a little bit of south in Burlingame. And we've been home sheltering now for 6 weeks. And my empty nest is now a very full nest. My 22 and 24-year-old daughters are home. Andre, I could see your son dressed as Superman in the background. That was kind of cute to see. So I've got some warm-up polls to do, and my intent is to start at 1 o'clock Lisbon time. That's GMT +1. And I'm actually using a different Slido. I'm going to be talking about culture, but it helps me to get to know the audience by asking some questions in advance. So to use Slido, the simplest way I find is if you just hold up your phone to the QR code using your camera app. You don't have to snap a picture, but it will magically pop up a Slido code for you. I've got a number of questions. If you're on a device like an Android with Lollipop, where that QR code functionality may not work, then all you need to do is go to www.slido.com and enter, the code is 1997, 1997. That's the year that Netflix was founded. So I've got a few minutes before I begin my talk, and as people assemble. So I've just got a couple of questions that I'd love to ask. The first is to get a sense of where everyone is coming from. So I know the extent to which any other folks that are in California are crazy enough to get on early. It looks like Slido's working. Andre, are you there?
I'm here.
Cool. And so your job is to figure out who lives the furthest from me in California.
Okay, I'll try to do it. Maybe Bangalore.
Possible. I always think in terms of hours of flight, how long it takes me to fly to these different places. That's in the good old days. I haven't been on a plane for 6 weeks now. When
we have people from Australia, so
yeah,
that should do the deal.
I know Ken Sandy's from there. I think he's from Melbourne. He's our next speaker. And that's about an 18-hour flight for me from San Francisco. I think the Antipodes, the opposite side of the globe for me, is somewhere off the coast of Southeast Africa. So there's an island there that's pretty darn close to, if I dug a hole through the center of the earth, it would take me there. Looks like a good local showing in Portugal as well.
It is. And we have people from Brazil, have people from Israel, India. Well, India definitely has a good presence today. Good people from Bangalore and also Iran. We have people from Berlin, Germany, London, UK in general, Greece. So it's a worldwide audience for sure.
Which of those cities would you most like to visit if you could right now?
If I could, well, maybe Madrid. I mean, it's kind of strange because it's close, but I do like the city. And after 6 weeks of sheltering, I think I would go anywhere right now. Right? People are just craving for traveling and seeing other worlds.
So my next question is just to get a sense on everyone's COVID-19 experience. So how stressful have you found the COVID-19 pandemic? And it ranges from extremely stressful to not at all stressful. And I'll see, Andre, if you're surprised in any way by the results that you see here today. I've asked this question of lots of people around the world, and it generally it varies by age. So, for instance, I'm 58 years old. I'm older than dirt, but I've got parents who are 83 that I have to worry about, and then 22 and 24-year-old kids. So it tends to create a little bit more stress for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you seeing here, Andre?
Well, apparently a little stressful is getting the most votes.
Yeah.
But we are people that have actually only 4% have said extremely stressful, and we have some brave people, not at all stressful, 40%. So.
Yeah, and the other thing, the other level stress is economic. I'm guessing that today, the folks that are participating in a webinar are engaged in the tech industry, and most of us have been able to continue to work, online.
Yeah, true.
Where there's lots of people in the world that just hasn't been possible, and that creates much more stress. So my other question related to this is, how long do you think it will be before things are almost normal? And I define that very, very broadly. And the two are related, those two questions. I've got my second monitor, so I'm answering the questions myself. I put it at 2 years.
Yeah, me too. I put it 2 years as well.
Yeah. And I totally appreciate the youthful optimism of 6 months. We can hope for the best, and we invariably end up planning for the worst. So it's hard. And in my household, my wife is in biotech. She runs early clinical research for a big pharma. So she's on phone calls 6 hours a day doing COVID-19 calls. So our household is, of course, we have 4 offices set up in the house now. It's kind of hysterical. Our house was not built for that. Okay, any surprises here for you, Andre?
No, actually, I think I'm not so surprised. I think 1 year tends to be the majority opinion. People think like 50%, over 50% think that in 1 year from now we should be good. It's great if you are in the conference business, because that means that for sure conference will be back into 2021. I'm more on the 6 months side. I really hope that we can have conference coming back by late fall, November, October. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing lots of webinars, lots of online workshops, lots of online exec events.
And how do you see this transition?
Actually, it's been better than I hoped or expected. Just while we're chatting, if anyone's joined us, I'm asking just some warm-up questions, and I'm going to start at 1 o'clock Lisbon time. But if you just hold up your phone using your camera, that will blast, that QR code will blast up a link to get you to my Slido. I'll be doing some polling during the talks, but right now I'm just working to get to know what's going on with folks around the world. This question is, have you read the Netflix Culture Deck? It's actually been read by about 20 million folks. And it was a big surprise for us because we put it up there because we were discovering that people that showed up at work on their first day were surprised about attributes of the company. One in particular, I'll talk about a little bit later, but we said rather than surprise them, we'll put the culture deck up in advance when they're checking out job descriptions. And our surprise was it was one of the most effective recruiting tactics for helping to introduce Netflix to lots of employees from all over the world. Our other surprise recruiting tactic, we did something called the Netflix Prize, where we put it out. We said we'll give $1 million to any teams of engineers that could improve our predictive power. It was called RMSE, our collaborative filtering algorithm. Anyway, so the real surprise about publishing the culture deck was how many people watched it and how many people got intrigued by Netflix. A big surprise to us. Anything here surprising to you, Andre?
Yeah, I would actually be expecting more people to have read it. Now, I came across it in a pretty spontaneous way. So it was not something I was looking for, but it just crossed my webs and I started reading, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
When was it published? Which year?
It was, excuse me, it would have been 2009.
2009.
Yeah.
Okay. And who had the idea? The human resources department or?
Yeah, I mean, the question is who owns culture in a company? And, you know, the way I describe it is I nicely give Reed Hastings, you know, something like 50% of the credit. He's the CEO of Netflix. Patty McCord ran the people function, the HR function, if you will. I give her like 30% of the credit and then 20% to the rest of the team. In point of fact, you know, Reed came to me one day and said, why don't you just publish that thing? You know, because I put, you know, I was the VP of product. I put stuff on the site and I did it, but all my pals assumed I had made an error. You know, hey, Gib, I don't know if you meant to, but we can now see the culture deck. So it was really a surprise. It was not, now everybody publishes it for some of the same reasons. All right, I'm going to move on to, you know, this is my last sort of warm-up question. If you're just joining us, I'm getting folks used to using Slido because I'm going to be doing some polling during my talk. I'm going to start at 1 o'clock Lisbon time, GMT +1. But to get set up with Slido, it's pretty simple. Hold up your phone, capture that QR code, and it'll take you to a link. And if your Android with Lollipop doesn't work, just go to slido.com and enter 1997. That was the year that Netflix was founded. This question, on a scale of 0 to 10, to what extent does your company have a well-defined culture that helps drive decisions around people, product, and the business? This is from 0 to 10, where 10 is best. At the end of the day, that's the real job of culture. It's to help people to make great decisions about people, product, and the decision. And the real beautiful thing is if people really understand the values of a company, they can make great decisions independently, and independently means fast. And so these were some of the thought experiments around the Netflix culture, and most of that worked out. What are you seeing here, Andre?
Well, it seems that most companies don't have such a well-defined culture. So culture keeps being an issue, and then very small percentage, only 10% have a well-defined or very well-defined culture, or at least the perception.
Yeah, and if you look carefully, you'll notice that I set this up to do a net promoter score calculation is pretty easy. NPS is you take the percentage that give it a 9 or a 10, and that's 10% at the moment. And then you subtract, those are the people who rave about their culture in this instance. You subtract the 0 to 6s, which is 50. So 10 minus 50 is minus 40. So this is a negative 40 NPS. That tells you how hard the NPS scale, frankly, is. And that, you know, I've asked this question all over the world, and it's nothing fundamentally surprising to me about that number. So if you're just joining us, we're helping you folks to get set up with Slido because I'm going to be doing some polling today. Just scan the QR code. And my intent is to start in about a minute, which will be Lisbon 1 o'clock time. I am in sunny California. It's about 5 in the morning, and somehow I got the early slot. I know Ken Sandy's out there. What time is it in Melbourne right now? Do you know, Andre?
Plus
5 in the morning.
+8. So
it's
for
10
him,
p.m.
There you go. He's there.
Yeah, 8
and then
PM,
I noticed Near Isles coming from New York City. He didn't have to wake up as early as I. What's going on here? Okay. And if you know me, you don't have to take pictures of screens because the PDF is available on my baby website. I put a bunch of links that I think would be relevant to this audience at www.gibsonbiddle.com. But the PDF is there. And my intent is you don't have to take pictures of every screen. Okay. You want to do the one sentence intro before I begin for folks who have just joined us, Andre?
Absolutely. So if you're just joining us now, 1 p.m. This is our first speaker of the day at Product Over Lemonade. Welcome to today's event. And just to give you some background on Gib, Gib was a VP of product at Netflix starting in 2005. And in 2010, he joined his next startup, Chegg, a textbook rental and homework help company that went public in 2014. Today, he's an advisor, writer, speaker, workshop host, and guest lecturer at both Stanford and INSEAD in France. Today, we're going to hear about how Netflix built a world-class culture. Gib, the floor is yours.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. And I'm hoping that Ken in the background will be heckling. So I'm going to start up with one question, which is, I've scraped and parsed the interwebs and gotten little parts of the description of their company culture. And I'm going to share with you 3 different companies. And then I just want you to decide which of these 3 companies speak to you. Which one might you like to join? So company A, they keep only our highly effective people. Career advancement's about the great role with the next company. You thrive on change. They have unlimited vacation and they pay top of market. This is company A. How does that feel to you? Company B, they keep only effective people. They invent mechanisms for career development. They do not compromise for sake of social cohesion. They avoid rules and they embrace frugality. This is company B. And company C, they make big, bold bets. Sometimes they fail, but failure makes them smarter. They ensure people of diverse backgrounds feel welcome. They value ideas over hierarchy. They work tirelessly to earn their customers' trust, and they do the right thing, period. So I've just shared 3 different companies, and I want you to choose one of these 3. Company A, Company B, or Company C. Choose one, and then I'm going to use Slido to find out which company you've elected to join, and then I will reveal. So this is where I'd love you to use Slido. If you're just joining, scan that QR code or go to slido.com and enter 1997. But just from the brief description that I've scraped and parsed from the interwebs, I'm deeply curious to see which of these 3 companies you would join. And I can see the overwhelming trend already, which is at this point, about 75% of you have joined company C. And it's relatively split between the 2 others, company A and company B. And I'm guessing that those who have chosen company C are deeply curious to see which company they join. So I'm just going to reveal which each of these 3 companies is right now. So company A, this is Netflix. I've taken the highlights from the description of their culture. And company B, the company that's way about frugality, is actually Dear Amazon. And here's the moment of truth where you discover company C. Company C is Uber. And most people are surprised when they bump into this. And the reason is that Uber had some celebrated failures in their culture. 2014, some bad things happened. 2016, more bad things happened. And then in 2017, lots of bad things happened. And these were actually failures in the culture until finally Travis Kalanick was forced to resign. And this is what I want you to think about and learn from this exercise. So that the first thing, I put the fish here because the fish stinks from the head. But in this case, it's critical that whatever you say about yourself, you have to walk the talk. You can't just say it. You got to act that way. And really, the bad cultures are where you say one thing and then the behaviors are actually opposite. And that was really what was going on at Uber. And that this culture, it's not a set it and forget it thing. Culture needs to be nurtured. It needs constant care and reinforcement over time. And that didn't happen at Uber. And then there's a concept of magnets and repellents. So I'm sure you all noticed that odd phrase describing Amazon, that they value frugality. And that's a good example of something that's attractive. There are some folks that are attracted. They put their money into more value for the customer, okay? Or at Netflix, one of the magnets and repellents was that phrase, adequate performance gets a generous severance package. To many, that was scary, but to some very talented folks, they're like, I'm guessing there's a really high bar of talent. And then obviously, if the description is true, it's a great way to evaluate whether an employee is a good fit with a company. All right, and Andre already introduced me. I just want you to focus on just one thing. I joined Netflix in 2005, and then I went on to my next startup in 2010. So I know a lot about those 5 years, and then I've worked to stay in touch with my pals. So the talk, it's really 3 chapters. I'm going to talk about what I mean by culture. I'll define it. I'm going to give you some inside perspective on how the Netflix culture was created. I'm going to do a case study there. And then I've got the Dell model that I'm hoping you'll apply to your work tomorrow as you think about your company's culture. And culture it's for leaders, but it's also for every employee in the building. It's your job to point out when behaviors are inconsistent with the culture, or to say, we should be exploring these new values. So this is really for everyone. So the definition of culture for me, it's all about solving a problem. And the problem is, as companies grow, so does complexity. Things get more complex. And with complexity, there's this need for folks, they want to impose more rules and processes. But rules and process inhibit creativity and talent. And it's just when you need more of both as you're growing. And this is a problem. And so at Netflix, we contemplated, gosh, there must be a better way than rules and process. And so the answer, excuse me, was culture. For me, it's a leadership and decision-making tool. It's a way that bright people can make decisions without talking to each other. It does help articulate these best fit employees. And then it avoids disastrous rules and processes. So an example in the States, United Airlines, a very well-meaning attendant at the gate, noticed this 2 young women, they were employees of United. They were wearing yoga pants, spandex, tight pants. And their interpretation of the rules is employees couldn't wear those pants, or employees' kids. That's the only thing my wife and daughter wear on a plane. And they were dragged off the plane, but this became a celebrated failure. And the news picked it up, and Sarah Silverman picked it up. And this well-meaning employee imposing the rules, caused the United stock to drop 5% in a day. And this is the problem with rules and with process. So for me, culture is how you behave when no one is looking. I have a sea of coffee cups here. In Silicon Valley, I used to wander into work at 10 in the morning, shorts and flip-flops. One morning I came in at 6:30 in the morning, and there was the CEO washing the coffee cups. I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? And he said, you guys do so much. I'm just trying to be helpful. But he was engaged in this activity where no one even knew about it. And it's who you hire, who you fire, and who you promote. And culture identifies the key skills and behaviors you seek in all of your employees. And it articulates these commonly understood principles and values. And cultures have mechanisms. So it's not enough just to have a bunch of words printed on a page and put it somewhere near the water cooler. You need mechanisms to bring these ideas to life so they really are in play. They make the desired behaviors part of your daily life. And typically, this is very associated with the decisions of who you fire, who you hire, fire, and promote. And then there are unique rituals. So I've put these shoes here. Amazon had a unique ritual because they believed in frugality. They had something called the Just Do It Award to the person who just independently did something that saved the company a lot of money. And in this case, a woman went through the whole country and all the operations centers. She realized that the soda machines didn't need to be lit, unscrewed all the lights, and saved tens of millions of dollars for Amazon by doing that one thing. In that quarter, she got the Just Do It Award, and she was awarded these stinky shoes, which people would proudly put on their desk. But this was a mechanism reinforcing how important frugality was to Amazon. So in all cultures, they need to be unique. You can't copy, or you shouldn't copy the Netflix culture, because every company needs different skills, behaviors, and values given your mission. And for companies, especially in the early days, I look to the stars, the talented people that are being promoted, et cetera, as embodying these are the characteristics that we as a company value. And you do need to make a bunch of hard choices. Every company's different. So for instance, and this is a continuum from freedom to control, Netflix, at the end of the day, if you watch a bad movie, no one's gonna die. And so they embody freedom. Another company like Boeing, where airplanes, if they fall out of the sky, bad things happen, they are much more on the control side of this continuum. So you need to decide where you live on this spectrum. Another one is, can you afford to be fully transparent within the company? At Netflix, very transparent. I knew the quarterly earnings report 4 weeks before they were released to Wall Street. I had tons of secrets. All the directors and VPs in the company knew that. Whereas a company like Apple is very secretive. They have hardware plans that get executed 2 years later, and if that secret gets out, bad things happen. And this is probably the hardest continuum. Where do you want to be on this continuum? Do you want to be like a family? And the way to think about that is you can't fire your family members. Club is one step up from that. Then there's a pro team, and actually Netflix in the last 5 to 10 years has focused on going from a pro team to a dream team, where the best person on the face of the earth was wanted for every position. And there's no good or bad in this. At Netflix, when I was there, we were working to be a pro team, and then it was moving into a dream team. And then my next startup is called Chegg. That's for students. We created a family environment. There's no right answer, but you need to decide as a company where you want to be on that continuum. There are lots of mistakes, and my favorite mistake with culture is when I walk in and I see all the dirty coffee cups, because the company thinks culture is all about foosball, coffee, and beer, and it's not. And then there's the problem of codifying too early. If you're a 5-person startup, you don't need to worry about this yet. You can make quick decisions without talking to each other. But the real problem is when companies don't think about this until they're 200 or 300, 400 people, and that's too late, or they never get to this conversation. And this is a hard one, and I don't have an answer, but make sure you're clear about how it should work. Who's responsible for articulating this culture and making sure that things work? At Netflix, as I said earlier, it was like 50% Reed Hastings, the CEO, 30% Patty McCord, head of HR, and then the rest of the team engaged in bringing this to life. Those pieces of paper near the water cooler, often I find them to be fuzzy and not clearly defined values, and with no mechanisms to bring them to life. And then in the case of Uber, just a failure to adapt as things change. These things do change. All right, so I'm going to spend a little time talking about the Netflix culture. If I recall, about 20% of you have read the culture deck, which is really astounding to me. So I'm just going to give you a brief history. Netflix started around 1997. In 1998, Reed Hastings was the co-founder, and he was trying to get Patty McCord, head of HR, on board. And she had worked with Reed before, and Reed would call her at 2 in the morning. Hey, come join. And she's like, why would I join a company where the CEO calls me at 2 in the morning when I'm not working? But at some point, Reed said, listen, the first time around, they had done a successful company. We had a great exit, but it was not a great company. So let's build a great company. And finally, she said yes, but she said one thing right out of the gate. She said, I'll do it. But from the beginning, no bozos and no assholes. And that was the beginning focus on getting the culture right. In 2001, a third of the company was laid off. Netflix couldn't figure out how to make the business model work initially. But the result was astounding. They went from maybe 300 people down to 200, and they just found it was more efficient. They were getting more work done. They started to focus on, gosh, what if we just get highly talented people, but not a lot of them? And then in 2005, the culture deck that you've seen, that's when it was begun to be written. And then we published it 4 years later. And as I was saying earlier, it was a surprise to us. It became a great recruiting tactic. But the reason we did it was people were surprised their first day at work by these tenets of the culture. And that's where we said, gosh, we should publish it so they could see it in advance. And then Patty McCord left in 2012. And this is important because she had helped set this culture, but there was one of the ideas there was called the keeper test. And you were encouraged to talk to your boss and ask the following question. So she asked this of her boss, Reed. Hey, Reed, if I were to leave tomorrow, would you fight to keep me? And in 2012, he said, no, actually. And what had happened is the company had become a truly international company. It was no longer engaged with people working in DVD operations hubs in the United States. It was a different company. And Patty wasn't actually that experienced at that. And that was the moment that they decided it was time for her to go on to the next great company. Huge revision of the deck. It was all about issues of inclusion during the Me Too era. And then in 2017, House of Cards was canceled. And what does that have to do with culture? That was a 20-minute decision by a woman named Cindy Holland. She had actually signed House of Cards in 2012. Kevin Spacey was implicated in the Me Too movement where he had sexually harassed a young boy. And Cindy, in reflecting on the culture and the values of the company, decided to kill House of Cards. 20-minute decision, independent. And this is how great cultures work. You can make great decisions without talking to anyone. So the Netflix culture, I encourage you to read it. I mean, I'll just give you the summary. It's decision-making by employees. It encourages open information sharing broadly and deliberately. That's why I knew all the earnings results in advance. Netflix employees are incredibly candid. They keep only their highly effective people, and it's a culture of freedom and responsibility. And they avoid rules. So here's Patty. Our core philosophy is people over processes. Highly talented people don't need rules, they don't need process. And that was the idea. And there are these are the 10 specific behaviors that they look for today. But I'd encourage you to visit the site and see the depth and care in describing what they mean by each of these in excruciating detail. I had to edit the deck for 4 years, every quarter. And after 4 years, I was gonna miss this quarterly meeting where we would do that, and Reed Hastings, the CEO, said, "Hey, Gib, I need your edits." I'm like, whoa. And this was one of the tactics that he used to keep these documents and really force people to think what was meant by each of these ideas. And then these ideas had come to life through this first principle thinking. At Netflix, we don't believe in best practices, because best practices, why would the stuff that worked at one company work at ours? There are different situations. So this first principle thinking was to look at all things like this and ask, okay, what are the required processes? Why do you do vacation tracking? Why do you keep compensation a secret? What if it was open? Why do you give 2 weeks a year in severance? And how do you think about loyalty in this modern era? And that first principle thinking took us to some different places. Required processes, all about talent density and give them context. And context is really strategy. In the era, I was on Blackberries back then. And you know, where you work, I was on a ski lift, but I was doing email and my working or playing. We finally said, you know what? It doesn't make a difference. We're going to give unlimited vacation. And it was a grown-up environment. You knew if you didn't deliver results, but if I skied 9 months a year, you wouldn't keep your job. We went to open compensation. So all directors and VPs and above knew the salary of everyone in the building. And it made us smarter about compensation. If you start, this is the way severance works at Netflix. If you start tomorrow and you get fired 2 days later, you'll get 4 months severance. The idea was to make it easy for managers to let folks go when they realized they were no longer the best person on the face of the planet for that role. And then the concept of loyalty. Patty is so proud of Netflix. It is a great company to be from. And that's the way that I feel as well. So the mechanisms, I alluded to this already. We edited the deck for 4 years in excruciating detail, and that kept these thoughts and these questions front and center for us. And we did lots of cases in role play. I'll give you a case in a bit, but a simple one. Someone takes 4 reams of paper from the copy machine home for their home office. Should you say something, do nothing? Should you reprimand or should you fire? And that person, we decided, no, you do nothing, because they're just trying to be more effective in working at home. We would have strategy meetings, lots of them. That was the most important context that you could provide. And that's where you learned these behaviors. I would do a quarterly product strategy meeting where you learned what it looked like to demonstrate those 10 cultural values. And there are many ways to reinforce culture. I had worked at Electronic Arts, and I said to Barry McCarthy, our CFO, I said, hey, we had quarterly awards for each of the values at Electronic Arts. And he looked at me and he said, that's the world's frickin' stupidest idea I've ever heard, Gib. And his answer was, we're a pro team. We don't need awards for doing our jobs. And my point is, you need different mechanisms at different companies. And we had lots of mechanisms. The culture deck helped people to assess if this was the right culture for them. We had generous sevens in this notion that we'd have a star in every position as we move from pro into that dream team. And in developing individuals, this concept of radical candor. And we did lots of cases in role playing. What would you do if, in order to train people in their thinking? And then for promotion, if there was a VP role available, then you might get it. But if there wasn't, you'd get the great role with the next company. So I went from VP of product to become the chief product officer at my next company. And people were delighted for me. Of course, there were challenges. So think about, Netflix went from a startup, I call it builder as you grow, into a pro and then a dream team. Lots of different people were needed. Like I could handle maybe the pro team at Netflix. I had taken statistics at business school, but at some point there was the recognition that they needed somebody in VP of product role who had a PhD in statistics as they went to dream team, right? Or think about a company that starts as DVD by mail, goes into streaming, then is international, and today they're largely an original content company. It's like they've needed 4 different teams over that time, and there are challenges. And then think about international expansion. Netflix believes in radical candor. Now think about 400 employees in Japan. In Japan, they don't, it's opposite of Japanese culture to say something incredibly candid to a person's face. You don't do that. So how does it work? Does Netflix culture change, or do the employees in Japan change? And the answer was they give 4 months of training to folks who were working at Netflix in Japan about radical candor and embracing it. And it worked, but it was very challenging. So I've referred to cases a bit, and I'm going to give you a case, and I want to just demonstrate how it helps tighten your thinking about what do you truly believe in and what do the values mean. So this is Todd Yellen. He was the director of personalization. I hired him. His job was to help connect movies with your taste, to help connect you with movies that you love. And I hope you understand that about 98% of the things that you choose on Netflix are merchandise to you. It's a personalized experience. And he delivered incredibly strong results. And he was a culture carrier. He was intellectually curious. He was candid. He was courageous. He was passionate about movies. He embodied the culture of the company. However, he had no reports. I set folks up so that they could think and do. Now, his work was leveraged, probably 100 engineers that are executing according to the vision that he's describing, designers, data scientists, but no reports. And the question is, should we promote him? Here's a person delivering amazing results. He embodies the culture, but nobody works for him. And should this person be promoted? And I'm sure you have a zillion questions. I'll give you some of them. Like, why didn't he have people who work for him? I didn't think it was important, okay? Does he need to have a team in order to be promoted to VP? Well, that's a fundamental question, and that's one of the things that I want you thinking about. Or should he go on to the next role at the next great company if he wants to be promoted? Did he ask for this? No. All right, so I'm going to put it to you right now. The question is, if you were his boss, would you promote him or not promote him? And I want you to think about the things that I've described in the Netflix culture. But this is a case, and this would be richly debated. In fact, it was richly debated. And I'm just curious to know, what would you do? Would you promote Todd to VP or not promote Todd? And if you're just joining, just hold up your phone, grab the QR code, and let me know what you would choose to do. What are you thinking, Ken? Sandy, would you promote him or not? How about you, Andre?
I know the answer.
Oh, you know the answer. Andre, would you promote her or not?
I would not.
Okay. And there's no right answer here, right? And this is what cases are about. They're like, okay, according to our values, what should we do? All right, so I'm seeing about a third are saying not promote, Todd, and 2/3, and there is no right answer. And it's actually this discussion, which is the rich part, about really describing what you mean by values. I will tell you what we chose to do. So we chose to promote him, and here's what I'm hoping you'll take away from this exercise. Just so you know, Todd, like one of his last projects was Black Mirror's Bandersnatch. It was one of the first interactive stories. I know there's some folks that have used it. Anyway, so here was the thinking. Personalization was so important to the company that this was a VP-worthy role. We should have a VP in a role like this. And then the second, we were encouraging a lean organization. Remember, way back in 2001, when a third of the folks were laid off, and then the recognition that this lean organization with highly talented people, it just felt good. So in fact, creating this system where you could be promoted to VP without building an empire was a really good thing. And then the really interesting thing here is that by promoting Todd, you're saying this is what behaviors at Netflix look like. And that's the culture carrier idea. So I'm gonna just bring this home with something I describe as the Dell model. I'm trying to keep it, I'm trying to keep a set of ideas that you can bring back to your work tomorrow as you apply some of this thinking to it. So do not copy and paste the Netflix culture, okay? You need to build a unique culture for your company based on its mission and its stage, whether you're a punk startup or a 10,000 person company. It's different for every company. In this Dell model, it says you need to define it, you need to edit it forever, and then you want to live it and celebrate it. So here's what I mean by this. A healthy culture, figure out, is it the right time to define this? And for most companies it is, but if you're a 5-person company, it's too early. And figure out who owns this idea. And that's a hard one. Look to the behaviors and skills of your stars because they embody those things that you're looking for, and make those hard choices. Do we want to be a family company or a pro team or even a dream team? And then the cool thing is if you can find those magnets and repellents that are really unique about you. And then edit, go back to that first principle thinking, experiment with ideas and do lots of juicy cases and role playing. What would you do if, to tease out what these values really mean? And then be open to the new hires, the new stars, that organization, and they grow like crazy, because those are a signal of how the culture might want to change over time. And then live it. Find these unique mechanisms that take these ideas on paper and bring them to life. Make it a part of every hire, fire, promote conversation. And then every employee, you have to question any behaviors that you see that are not consistent with the values. And you need to challenge the values and say, why do we still believe in this given something like the Me Too movement? That was why the company had to revise in 2015 the deck to get smarter about issues of inclusion, and then celebrate it. And this process continues forever. You define it, you edit it, you live it forever and ever and ever. So I want to close with just one story. There are these 2 fish swimming this way, 1 fish swimming that way. And this fish approaches the 2 fish and looks over them and says, "How's the water?" And these 2 fish keep swimming along and they look at each other and they say to themselves, "What the heck is water?" Culture is like water to a fish. You can't see it, and it's hard to know exactly what it is, but it governs everything we do and all that is possible. And that's really what I've been trying to do, is describe the water of culture, which is an incredibly hard thing to do. This is a photo from Netflix. This is them celebrating 100 million members. It gives you a sense of, and just think about how amazing it is that a DVD by mail company grew into a streaming international company. Last year, they had more Oscar nominations than HBO. They're now an original content company. And that's the celebration of a culture. You can't do that with rules and processes, but you can do it with incredibly talented people. And so with that, I'm going to say thank you. If you know me well, you know I'm not quite done. because sometimes I feel like a street performer doing my thing. There's the crowd. And then the street performer does this incredibly stupid thing. They ask for money and everybody leaves. And I've done that. You've all left. I am not asking for money. I'm asking for your feedback. So if you could hold up your phone now, capture this QR code, it'll magically pop up a link. 0 sucks, 10 is great. It's a net promoter score from SurveyMonkey. So pick any number from 0, which sucks, 10 is great, any number you want. And I'd love, love, love it if you gave me one idea about something you enjoyed about this talk and one idea that would make it better. This is my 344th survey result, and the feedback has been incredibly, incredibly helpful to me. And if that didn't work, www.gibsonbiddle.com, I created a link for you, but I also put the PDF of the presentation there. I also put the link for the Netflix culture deck, the link for Amazon's leadership principles, and that's a short document and it's awesome. And then Burning Man is an incredible cultural standard. It's the party in the desert with 60,000 people. It has no roles and processes, but these 12 principles, and it's fascinating. And there's 3 radically different cultures for you there. And with that, I truly say thank you. And it's been a great honor, Andre, to be part of your Product Over Lemonade. And I'm looking forward to going back to bed in a minute. And Ken Stanley,